Most people think spending more money on a tennis racket automatically means getting a better racket. Most people are wrong. The difference between a $40 racket and a $4,000 racket has almost nothing to do with how well it hits a tennis ball. It has everything to do with understanding what you are actually paying for at each level. These are the 7 levels of tennis rackets. By the end of this, you will know exactly where to spend your money, where the real value lives, and where you are just paying a massive markup for a fancy paint job. The entire tennis industry runs on one thing: your ignorance of the math. Every brand on the wall is counting on you never checking the stiffness ratings, the factory tooling costs, or the actual materials hidden beneath the glossy marketing. We are tearing down all 7 tiers, from mass-produced sporting goods aisles to heavily guarded, player-exclusive custom molds. Once you see the internal architecture of how this industry actually prices its gear, you will never look at the wall of a pro shop the same way again. Level 1. The mass market toy. This is where almost everyone starts their journey, grabbing a racket off the rack at a big box department store or scrolling through Amazon, completely unaware that they aren't even holding a real piece of athletic equipment. We are talking about rackets that sit between $20 and $50. The generic Amazon specials like Oppum or the Wilson Tour Slam dominating the sporting goods aisles of Walmart. Here is what most beginners get wrong about Level 1. The cheap price tag doesn't just mean a lack of fancy features. It means the engineering is fundamentally flawed. The marketing will throw around terms like volcanic frame technology or air-light alloy. Translate that from PR speak, and it means cheap cast aluminum. The actual factory cost to forge one of these frames overseas is a laughable $4 to $8. Because they are aluminum, they are usually 2-piece frames, meaning the hoop and the handle are literally screwed or welded together at the throat. But the real crime here is the physics. Pro labs don't even bother giving these rackets an RA stiffness rating because aluminum doesn't flex upon ball impact. It violently vibrates. When you hit the ball slightly off-center, that 2-piece aluminum frame offers 0 torsional stability. It sends a kinetic shockwave directly down the shaft and into your ulnar nerve. You aren't buying a starter racket to learn the game. You are buying a 27-inch tuning fork that guarantees bad habits and an inevitable injury. The best value at Level 1? Honestly, finding a used graphite racket at a thrift store. But if you must buy new, the generic $20 aluminum frames are mechanically identical to the $45 ones with a brand logo slapped on them. At this level, do not pay the brand tax. Level 2. The Gateway Carbon. This is where rackets stop looking like department store toys and start looking like legitimate weapons. But this is also where the real medical traps of the industry begin. You are spending between $60 and $100 here. This tier is dominated by rackets like the legendary Head TIS6, widely marketed as the best-selling racket in tennis history. Here is what the marketing will not tell you about Level 2. Being impossibly lightweight is not a feature. It is a massive liability. The T.S6 weighs just 8.9 ounces strung. Beginners pick it up in the pro shop, feel how light it is, and immediately swipe their credit card. But to stop a racket this unbelievably light from snapping in half when it impacts a heavy tennis ball, the factory has to make it brutally stiff. Independent lab tests confirm the T.S6 has a staggering RA stiffness rating of 75. For context, anything over 68 is considered a serious risk for joint pain. Because the frame refuses to bend, it absorbs absolutely 0 shock. The kinetic energy of the ball bypasses the racket entirely and detonates directly inside your wrist and elbow tendons. And the math is terrifying. The factory tooling costs for this 1997 mold were paid off 25 years ago. It costs roughly $12 to manufacture, making it a pure profit machine for the brand. You aren't buying modern performance. You are buying a biomechanical nightmare that cashes in on 1990s nostalgia while literally destroying your mechanics. The best value at Level 2 is the Babolat Boost line or the Head Speed. They aren't pro-level frames, but they keep the stiffness ratings out of the danger zone and give you an actual graphite composite build for under $100 without threatening your orthopedic health. Level 3. The retail standard. This is the exact sweet spot of the entire tennis industry, and the major brands absolutely hate it when you shop here. We are talking about the $140 to $180 price range. This is where you find previous generation flagships or high-end direct-to-consumer models like the Artengo TR990 Pro. Here is the uncomfortable truth about the tennis market. Racket technology is not a smartphone. It does not reinvent itself every 24 months. When brands release a new $280 flagship racket, it is almost always just a fresh coat of paint on the exact same graphite mold they used 2 years ago. At level 3, you are finally getting a 100% high modulus carbon fiber layup. No aluminum, no cheap fiberglass fillers. You get a true one-piece continuous frame weighing in at the golden standard of 300 grams unstrung. More importantly, the stiffness ratings drop back down to the arm-friendly 62 to 65 RA range, meaning the racket actually flexes and absorbs the shock the way it was engineered to. A 2022 Yonex E-Zone on clearance for $150 uses the exact same premium Japanese carbon fiber as the brand new $280 version. The only difference is the cosmetic paint job. You aren't buying a budget racket. You are paying for high-performance engineering instead of subsidizing this year's multi-million-dollar ad campaign. The best value at level 3 is hunting down last generation's flagship models on clearance. The Yonex E-Zone 100 2022 or the Head Speed 2022. You get a $260 pro-level weapon for roughly $150. Leaving the brand's marketing department completely empty-handed. Once you understand the math at level 3, paying full retail starts to look like a scam. Level 4. The hype and marketing tier. Now we are getting into the territory where the name on the throat of the racket matters more than the physics of the frame. This is the $250 to $280 price point. This level is completely dominated by the industry heavyweights, the Babolat Pure Drive, and the Wilson Clash. Here is what the marketing will not tell you at level 4. You are not paying for a breakthrough in physics. You are paying to fund the exact ad campaign that tricked you into buying the racket. Let's look at the Babolat Pure Drive. It is legendary for delivering explosive, effortless power. But what the glossy brochures hide is the brutal physical cost of that power. To achieve that trampoline effect, the Pure Drive is engineered to an unforgiving RA stiffness of 72. If you don't have perfect, pro-level mechanics, that kinetic shockwave bypasses the frame entirely and acts as a battering ram against your arm tendons. On the opposite end, the Wilson Clash relies on their proprietary FreeFlex carbon mapping. They spent millions to convince the world this was the future of tennis. But when advanced players actually took it to the court, the truth leaked out. The Clash flexes so much, it was universally dubbed the wet noodle, absorbing so much energy that it completely robs you of directional control. And the math? The manufacturing cost for the Clash's carbon mapping lands at roughly $25 to $30 overseas. You aren't buying a competitive weapon at this level. You are buying a highly marketed wet sponge, or the down payment on your future medical bills. The best value at level 4 is the Yonex V-Core series. While Wilson and Babolat mass-produce in unregulated overseas factories with terrible quality control, Yonex manufactures their premium frames in Japan to incredibly strict tolerances. If you are going to spend $260, spend it on strict engineering, not an advertising budget. Level 5. The Ego and Logo Tax Tier. This is where tennis equipment splits the community straight down the middle. We are talking $280 to $350. The Lacoste L20 and the Wilson Pro Staff RF97 Autograph live here. This is the ultimate vanity trap. With the Lacoste L20, you are promised premium French elegance. But tear down the marketing and the truth is insulting. Lacoste does not engineer modern tennis rackets. They simply bought the manufacturer Technifiber in 2017. The Lacoste L20 is a $22 mid-tier factory build dressed up in glossy white paint with a green crocodile slapped on it. That is a 1,100% markup for a sticker. Then you have the RF97 Autograph. This racket was marketed as the exact, unedited weapon of Roger Federer. Amateurs rushed to drop $300 to own a piece of history. But here is the savage reality of the math. The RF97 weighs an absurd 340 grams unstrung. Add strings, an overgrip, and a dampener, and you are swinging 360 grams of pure mass. To wield it effectively, you need the biomechanics of a literal god. For 95% of amateur players, it is too heavy, too stiff, and will actively destroy your shoulder. You aren't buying tennis equipment at level 5. You are paying a massive premium to cosplay as a country club elite, or buying a $300 paperweight built entirely around a celebrity handshake. The best value at level 5? Honestly, skipping it entirely. But if you must spend this kind of money on a frame, look at boutique brands like Angel Custom. They let you choose your exact weight, balance, and stiffness without a single corporate logo artificially inflating the price. Level 6. True Pro Stock. Now we enter the territory where rackets require serious research, underground connections, and a rejection of everything the industry has told you. At level 6, we expose the single biggest scam in the entire tennis world. The retail paint job. We are talking $600 to $1,500 per racket. You will never find these in a retail store. You walk into a pro shop and drop $260 on a Babolat Pure Aero or a Head Speed because it is exactly what Carlos Alcaraz or Novak Djokovic swings on TV. Here is the massive, dirty secret. No, it isn't. The racket the pros are holding is not the racket you are buying. Underneath the glossy paint of a pro's racket is a pro stock mold, like the legendary Head PT57A or the Wilson H22. These are heavily customized, lead-injected, silicone-filled hairpins based on geometries that haven't been sold to the public since the 1990s. The brands take a cheap, mass-produced $25 retail frame, painted to look exactly like the custom pro stock version, and use the athlete's face to justify the hype. At level 6, you bypass the retail scam. You are tracking down real pro stock frames on private forums. You are paying for custom molded grip pallets, injected handle silicone for pure shock absorption, and swing weights tailored to the gram. You aren't buying a mass-market product. You are buying a heavily guarded, player-exclusive weapon that the retail industry desperately hopes you never find out about. The best entry point into level 6 is navigating trusted private forums like Talk Tennis or String Forum. Buy from verified collectors who have access to real pro room codes. It is expensive, but it is the only way to hold what the pros actually hold. Level 7. The Museum Grail. We have officially left the realm of sports and entered the world of hoarding, extreme wealth, and preservation. At level 7, you will find rackets that sell for $3,400 to well over $30,000. On the retail side, you have the Chanel tennis racket. Chanel takes a mass-produced generic graphite blank that costs $15 to forge in an overseas factory. They paint it flat black, stencil their interlocking C onto the strings, wrap the handle in quilted leather, and charge $3,450 for it. That is a 17,000% markup. There is no R&D. A $3,400 Chanel racket plays identical to a $40 generic frame from a discount website. On the auction side, you have match-worn artifacts. The exact custom Babolat racket Rafael Nadal used in the 2006 French Open and Wimbledon finals sold at Sotheby's for $33,600. Here is the uncomfortable truth about Level 7. Most people who buy these rackets never swing them. They live in climate-controlled safes and get photographed for insurance purposes. And that is genuinely fine. The sports memorabilia market has created real wealth for collectors. But if you are buying a Chanel racket because you think it will hit a tennis ball proportionately better than a $150 racket, you are going to be deeply disappointed. The law of diminishing returns hits hardest at the very top. You aren't buying a tennis racket anymore. You are buying a trophy with strings. So where does that leave the average tennis player? The sweet spot lives between levels 3 and 4. From the retail standard up through the high-end flagships, roughly $150 to $260. This is where engineering and performance actually align. Start at level 3. Buy a clearance flagship from last year. Learn how a real graphite frame feels without subsidizing an ad campaign. Step into level 4 only when you know exactly what your swing mechanics need. Splurge on level 6 pro stock only if you are an elite amateur obsessed with customization. And unless you are building a collection as a genuine investment, ignore level 7 entirely. That money buys 20 incredible rackets instead of one grail you are afraid to scuff on the court. The best tennis racket is the one you actually take to the court. Everything else is just expensive furniture. If this breakdown opened your eyes to how the tennis industry actually works, subscribe. We go this deep into the gear and the math every single week. Start demanding receipts and stop paying for a story. I'll see you in the next one.